The royal cruiser Eshalara drifted through the quiet black of space, its silver hull gleaming against a distant nebula. Inside, everything was order and grace. The Zirathi were a proud ancient species, tall, elegant, and calm. Their ships were more like moving cathedrals than machines of metal. And at the center of the ship, in a room filled with soft blue light, sat Queen Verethsa herself. She was a ruler of dignity and logic. Her people valued perfection in all things: science, art, diplomacy. They looked down on the young, chaotic species called humans. Humans were loud, emotional, and unpredictable. To the Zirathi, they were a mystery wrapped in trouble. But tonight, none of that mattered. Without warning, a deep vibration passed through the ship's decks. The hum of the engines turned into a roar. Lights flickered, and the graceful corridors filled with red alarms. The calm voice of the ship's AI broke into static before dying completely. Then came the sound that no Zirathi wanted to hear, a reactor warning. The Queen's guards rushed to her chamber. "Your Majesty, the containment core is unstable. We must evacuate." Verethsa rose, her silver robes flowing behind her. Her voice remained calm. "How long until breach?" 8 minutes, Majesty," said her chief engineer, his pale face tight with fear. "We are too deep in the field. Escape pods will not clear the blast radius." She understood what that meant. No one was coming. No one ever came when the reactor failed. A ship this large would explode with the power of a small star. The nearest friendly outpost was hours away. Still, she stood tall. "Send the distress beacon," she said softly. "And tell the people, their queen is with them." The beacon went out. A pulse of white light lost in the endless dark. No one expected an answer. Far away in the human sector, a small corvette named Vigilant Dawn picked up the signal. The ship was old, its hull scarred from years of asteroid duty. Its crew of 6 worked under the Earth Federation's Search and Rescue Command. Their job was simple: save lives, no matter the flag. Captain Elias Trent sat in the command chair when the signal appeared on his screen. He was a man in his mid-30s with short dark hair and a steady gaze. He leaned forward, reading the alien glyphs scrolling across the console. "Distress call," said his pilot, a woman named Ray. "Zirathi code. Reactor failure. Estimated loss of ship, 5 minutes." Elias exhaled slowly. "Nearest Federation ship?" 17 minutes out, Ray replied. He didn't hesitate. "Plot a jump." "We're going in." The navigator turned to him, shocked. "Sir, if that reactor blows, we'll be dust before we're even in range." Elias's voice was calm. "Then we move fast. Strap in." The Vigilant Dawn jumped. In less than a minute, the small human ship appeared on the edge of the Zirathi cruiser's death zone. The view was terrifying. The massive vessel burning from within, panels peeling away like molten leaves. Plasma leaks glowed like waterfalls of light. The ship was coming apart. Ray swallowed hard. "She's going critical." "Lock on the beacon," Elias ordered. "Find survivors." The scanners picked up life signs, thousands spread across the failing decks. But the system couldn't identify individuals. They had minutes before the radiation became lethal. Elias stood and grabbed his rescue suit. "Ray, get us close. Talk with any hatch that's still stable." She stared at him. "You're going over there?" He pulled on his helmet. "Someone has to." The corvette shuddered as it latched onto the cruiser's airlock. The heat warning screamed in the cockpit. The outer hull temperature climbed higher than it should have. Ray cursed under her breath. "You've got 6 minutes, Cap." "That's 5 too many," Elias replied, stepping through the lock. Inside the cruiser, the air was thick with smoke and static. Gravity flickered on and off. He could hear distant shouts in a language he didn't understand. The corridors looked like rivers of light and fire. He moved fast, using his scanner to locate the strongest life signs. The readings led him toward the upper decks, near the command center. He forced open sealed doors, climbed through collapsed hallways, and called out through the translator on his wrist. "Rescue team, I'm here to help." At first no one answered. Then a voice came through the smoke, calm, commanding, and strangely musical. "Who speaks?" "Captain Elias Trent, Human Rescue Corps." "I'm here to get you out." A group of Zirathi guards appeared, their silver armor cracked and burned. Their leader raised a weapon. "Human, this is no place for you. Leave us." Elias ignored the weapon. "Your ship's reactor is unstable. You've got 3 minutes before it blows. If you want your queen to live, follow me." The guards hesitated, surprised he knew of their queen. Then, behind them, the queen herself stepped into view. She was tall, graceful, her skin a pale shade of violet that shimmered in the light. Even covered in soot and sparks, she carried herself like royalty. Her gaze locked on the human in the scorched suit, and for a moment she seemed more curious than afraid. "You would risk your life for strangers?" she asked. Elias nodded. "That's what I do." Something flickered in her eyes, a strange mix of disbelief and wonder. Then the floor beneath them trembled. A deep rumble echoed through the deck. Time was running out. "Move," Elias shouted. He led them through the burning corridors, guiding them with practiced efficiency. 2 guards were injured. He helped carry them. The queen refused to leave anyone behind, and Elias didn't argue. He understood that kind of loyalty. When they reached the docking bay, the vigilant dawn waited like a small miracle amid the chaos. Ray's voice came through his comm. "Elias, the containment core is collapsing. You've got 90 seconds. "Understood," he replied. "Prepare for emergency on dock." He turned to the queen. "Get your people inside." "Now!" The guards obeyed, carrying the wounded aboard the corvette. The queen followed last, turning once to look at her dying ship. There was sorrow in her expression, but also something new. Respect for the human who had come through the fire for her. Elias sealed the hatch and shouted, "Go!" The corvette detached just as a white wave of light erupted from the HFY. The explosion rolled across space like a silent storm. The vigilant dawn was flung sideways, alarms wailing, but the small ship held together. When the shockwave passed, the stars returned. Inside, the queen and her guards stood in silence. None of them spoke. They looked at the human captain, his suit scorched, his face streaked with sweat and ash. He looked exhausted, but alive. Ray's voice came over the intercom. "We're clear. Reactor went up just behind us." "You did it, Cap." Elias removed his helmet, breathing hard. "How many did we get?" 72 life signs aboard," Ray said softly. "All stable." The queen stepped closer to him. Up close, her eyes shimmered like liquid gold. "You saved my people," she said quietly. "And me," he shook his head. "You'd have done the same." She tilted her head slightly. "No, my people would not. Not for outsiders. Not for humans," he gave a faint smile. "Then maybe it's time they learned." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, the alien queen and the human rescuer, standing amid the soft hum of the ship. Around them, her guards bowed in silence, unsure how to act. The queen broke the quiet first. "Captain Elias Trent," she said, her voice steady. "I owe you a debt that cannot be measured in words. My empire owes you more than it can repay." Elias wiped soot from his face. "You don't owe me anything, Majesty. I just did my job." She studied him with a faint, unreadable smile. "Perhaps that is what makes it extraordinary." Outside, the wreckage of the HFY drifted among the stars, its silver fragments catching the light like shards of a fallen crown. Inside the small human corvette, 2 worlds that had never understood each other shared a fragile moment of peace. As the vigilant dawn turned toward the nearest safe station, Elias sat quietly in the cockpit, glancing at the sensor display. Behind him, the queen watched the stars through the viewport. She had ruled for centuries, seen empires rise and fall, but never had she witnessed courage like this, raw, reckless, and pure. For the first time in her long life, she wondered if the humans, chaotic as they were, might hold a secret her people had long forgotten. And though she said nothing, one thought echoed in her mind as the stars drifted by. "I must know more about them. I must know more about him." It had been 3 weeks since the destruction of the HFY. The story of the Queen's rescue had spread through every system like light through glass. Every species in the nearby sectors knew the same headline: "Human Captain Saves Alien Queen from Certain Death." In the human colonies, people treated Elias Trent as a hero. His name was printed across every news channel. His face shone beside the image of the destroyed royal cruiser. But to Elias it didn't feel like heroism. He had done what anyone trained in rescue would have done. He had answered a distress call. Nothing more. He sat in the command chair of the Vigilant Dawn as it orbited a neutral station near the border of Zirathi space. He watched the silent glow of the nebula outside and tried to rest, but his mind didn't settle. He had seen the Queen's eyes before the explosion. Calm, proud, yet touched by fear. And he couldn't forget them. Ray, his pilot, floated beside him with a steaming cup of coffee. "You know," she said lightly, "most people who save a queen get a palace or at least a medal. You just got 3 sleepless nights in an overworked Corvette. Elias smiled faintly. I'm not sure they even give medals for this sort of thing. They should, she replied. Then her smile faded. Command's been sending messages all day. Something about an official meeting. You might want to read them. Before he could answer, the ship's comm chimed. A formal voice came through, crisp and clear. Captain Elias Trent, you are ordered to report to the Zirathi capital world within the next solar cycle. You are to attend an audience with Her Majesty, Queen Virethza. The invitation is extended personally. Ray whistled. Well, looks like the Queen hasn't forgotten you. Elias leaned back, unsure what to feel. The Zirathi were a powerful empire, ancient and distant. No human had ever been invited to their palace. Not even ambassadors. Whatever this was, it wasn't normal. I guess we'd better not keep her waiting, he said quietly. The journey to the Zirathi homeworld took 2 days. When the vigilant dawn finally emerged from hyperspace, the crew stared in silent awe. Before them was a world like a jewel, wrapped in clouds of silver and turquoise with rings that shimmered like frozen rainbows. Dozens of royal ships patrolled its orbit, their designs elegant and sharp. Elias received a signal, guiding his ship toward a docking port on a massive orbital platform. As the small human corvette approached, it was dwarfed by the size of the Zirathi fleet. Inside the docking bay, hundreds of alien eyes watched the vigilant dawn land. The air shimmered faintly, and the platform's metallic floor reflected the glow of distant suns. When Elias stepped out, a formal escort was waiting. The lead officer, tall and graceful, bowed slightly. Captain Trent, Her Majesty welcomes you to Zirath Prime. Please follow. Elias nodded and walked with them, trying not to feel out of place. The Zirathi Palace was a vast structure of glass and crystal, its halls filled with floating light orbs that sang in gentle tones. Everything seemed alive. Walls, floors, even the air carried a hum of energy. At the far end of a long, glowing corridor, enormous doors opened to reveal the royal hall. It was shaped like the inside of a star, bright, elegant, and endless. At its center stood Queen Virethza. She was dressed in flowing silver robes that caught the light like water. Her crown was simple, not of gold or jewels, but of living crystal that pulsed faintly with her heartbeat. She turned as Elias entered, her golden eyes meeting his. He bowed slightly, unsure what was proper. Your Majesty, she smiled, a small, graceful smile that softened her face. Captain Elias Trent, at last we meet without fire between us. I'm honored to be here, he said simply. The Queen studied him in silence for a moment, then gestured toward a quiet alcove. Walk with me. They moved side by side through the open garden terrace that surrounded the hall. Above them, the glass ceiling revealed the swirling gas giant below, glowing like a living ocean. When I sent that distress signal, she said softly, I did not believe anyone would come. Not even my own allies dared approach. The explosion would have consumed them. Elias nodded. It was a risk, yet you came, she said. Why? He paused. Because it was the right thing to do. Someone needed help. That's all? She stopped walking and turned to him. You did not know who I was. You didn't even know if we were friend or enemy. Didn't matter, Elias said. You were alive. That was enough. The Queen's eyes lingered on him. You speak as though your heart commands your logic. My people are the opposite. We act only when logic allows. He smiled faintly. Then maybe that's what makes us different. For the first time she laughed, a soft musical sound. Different indeed. They continued walking, and the Queen asked him about humanity. She wanted to know about Earth, about the oceans and forests she had seen only in images. She was curious about music, about laughter, about what humans did when they were not fighting wars. Elias told her about the old cities, the way children played in the rain, and how people still looked up at the stars even though they could already reach them. The Queen listened in silence, her golden eyes thoughtful. You humans, she said quietly, you are fragile creatures. And yet there is something unbreakable in you. My advisors say it is recklessness. I think it is something else. What do you think it is? He asked. Hope, she said, even when reason says there is none. They reached a balcony overlooking the shining capital city below. Towers of crystal rose like mountains of light, and ships glided silently between them. The Queen rested her hands on the railing, looking out at her world. When the Ashlara was destroyed, she said, I thought my people would lose faith in me, but instead they speak of your act as if it were a miracle. You have become a symbol, one I did not expect. Elias shifted uncomfortably. I'm not a symbol. I just did my job. She looked at him, her expression soft. Perhaps. But sometimes, Captain, doing one's duty is what creates legends. Before he could answer, a sudden sound filled the air. A low tone from her wrist device. Her expression changed instantly. An emergency in the council chamber, she said. Stay here. She left with 2 guards, her silver robes whispering against the floor. Elias stood alone on the balcony, watching the sky. Something about this place felt heavy, as if every movement carried 1,000 years of expectation. Minutes passed before the Queen returned, her face tight with worry. There are members of my court, she said quietly, who believe I have grown too close to your kind. They say your presence here is a danger. Elias frowned. Because I'm human. Yes, she said. Our empires have never trusted each other. Some believe your rescue was a plot, a manipulation. That's ridiculous, he said. I didn't even know who you were. I know, she said. But reason is not always what guides politics. She looked tired for the first time since he had met her. Still, I will not ask you to leave. I invited you here because I wish to understand humanity, and perhaps because, she paused, choosing her words carefully, because I wish to understand you. Elias met her gaze. Then I'll stay as long as I'm welcome. The Queen gave a faint smile, almost shy. Then you are welcome indeed. Outside, the planet's rings glimmered like a halo of silver. The stars beyond seemed closer now, as if listening. That night, the Queen hosted a formal gathering in her palace. Every noble and council member attended. When Elias entered the grand hall, all conversation stopped. Hundreds of eyes turned toward him, the lone human among the Scifi elite. He stood tall, his dark uniform clean but plain, surrounded by beings twice his height, wrapped in light and grace. The Queen appeared soon after, taking her place at the center. When she spoke, her voice carried through the hall like music. Let it be known, she said, that this man, Captain Elias Trent of Earth, is a friend of the sovereignty. Without his courage, I would not stand before you. Some in the crowd bowed respectfully. Others turned away, their faces cold. The Queen didn't seem to care. She stepped closer to Elias, her eyes steady. You saved more than a life that day, she said softly. You saved my faith in what still lives among the stars. Elias felt every gaze on him, but none of it mattered. In that moment, it was only her voice, her words, her eyes. And somewhere deep in the halls of that shining palace, as lights shimmered and music played, a quiet alliance began to form. One built not on treaties or strategy, but on something much older. Trust. The days after the Queen's gathering passed in quiet tension. To most of the Scifi court, Elias Trent was still an outsider, an unpredictable human whose very presence upset the perfect order of their world. Yet for Queen Viretza, the human captain had become something more. She found herself thinking about him often. His calm voice, his steady courage, and the strange warmth he carried even when the air around him was cold. Humans were unlike any species she had known. They burned brighter and faster, like sparks, in the dark, and Elias seemed to carry that light wherever he went. Elias, for his part, tried to remain professional. He spent his days learning about Scifi customs, speaking with their engineers and advisors, and sending updates back to Earth Command. He was aware that many of the nobles disliked him. Some stared with thinly veiled suspicion. Others whispered when he passed, but he didn't mind. He hadn't come to make friends. He had come to understand the Queen who had changed everything. One morning, as he stood on a balcony overlooking the capital's glowing spires, he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned and saw the Queen approaching, wearing a simple robe of deep blue instead of her royal silver. Without her crown, she looked less like a ruler and more like someone simply curious about the world. Captain Trent, she said gently, I hope the palace has not been too uncomfortable. He smiled. I've slept in worse places. You should see a human mining ship sometime. She laughed softly. Perhaps one day I will. They stood side by side, watching the sunrise spread across the rings of the planet. The light shimmered off the city's towers, casting long shadows. The Queen spoke again, her voice softer now. You know, my people are still trying to understand you. They say humans act before thinking, that you are ruled by emotion. Elias looked thoughtful. Maybe that's true sometimes, but we also act because we care. If someone's in danger, we don't wait for logic to give permission. The Queen nodded slowly. That is what frightens them, I think. The idea that compassion can be stronger than reason. Before Elias could reply, a sudden tremor ran through the ground. The glass around them shivered. A sharp alarm echoed through the palace halls. The Queen's eyes widened. An attack? Elias asked instantly. One of the guards rushed into the balcony. Your Majesty, there has been an explosion in the East Tower. The council chamber is under assault. Without hesitation, Elias turned to her. We have to move. Now. The Queen nodded, her calm already returning. Together they ran through the shining corridors, followed by her guards. The sound of distant impacts echoed around them, small but sharp like energy bursts. The palace's defense systems came alive, golden shields forming over the walls. When they reached the inner hall, smoke was pouring through the doors. 2 guards were down. Others were holding back a group of intruders wearing dark armor. Assassins with cloaked faces, their movements fast and coordinated. Elias pulled one of the fallen guards' weapons from the floor and took position beside the others. He didn't hesitate. Training took over. He aimed, fired short bursts, and gave cover for the guards to move the Queen back. The attackers were skilled, but reckless. They focused their fire on the Queen, ignoring everything else. That made it easy for Elias to predict their moves. He shouted commands, simple and sharp, and somehow the Zirathi soldiers obeyed without question. Within minutes, the hall fell silent again. The attackers lay unconscious or restrained. The Queen looked around at the damage, cracked floors, scorched walls, fallen glass. Then her eyes found Elias. He was standing near the doorway, smoke still drifting around him. His uniform was torn, and a thin line of blood traced his arm where a fragment had grazed him. The Queen hurried to him, concern in her eyes. You are hurt. It's nothing, he said, brushing off the wound. Are you safe? She nodded slowly. Thanks to you. Her guards bowed deeply to Elias, their earlier suspicion replaced with quiet respect. The captain looked embarrassed. Just did what anyone would do, he said. But the Queen shook her head. No, Captain. You did what only a human would do. After the attack, the palace entered a state of lockdown. The council met behind sealed doors. Whispers filled every corridor, rumors that the attack had come. From within, from nobles who disapproved of the Queen's closeness to the human. Elias hated politics. He could feel the tension in the air like a storm that wouldn't break. Still, he stayed close to the Queen, assisting wherever she needed him. He repaired damaged security systems, advised her guards, and refused to rest until the palace was safe again. At night, he often found her in the Royal Observatory, a vast room of glass and stars. She would stand there silently, gazing into the endless dark. One evening, he joined her there. You should get some sleep, he said softly. The Queen didn't turn. Do you ever wonder, she said, why the stars seem so close and yet so far? Elias smiled faintly. Every night. She looked at him then. When I ruled my people, I believed strength was found in control, in logic and order. But when my ship was burning, none of that saved me. It was chaos that saved me. Chaos wearing a human face. He chuckled quietly. That's one way to describe it. She stepped closer, her voice gentler. Tell me, Captain, do all humans act as you do? Without hesitation? Without fear? He thought for a moment. Most of us feel fear. We just don't let it stop us. Why? She asked. What drives you to risk your life for others? Elias looked up at the stars. Because if we don't, then who will? Someone has to do something, even when it's dangerous. That's what makes life worth living. The Queen watched him in silence. She could sense the honesty in his words, the quiet strength that had no need for pride. In that moment, she realized why the human heart was so hard to understand. It wasn't ruled by reason or instinct. It was ruled by choice, a choice to care. The next morning, the Queen called a private meeting in the council chamber. Elias was invited, though some of the nobles clearly disapproved. One of them, a tall elder with cold eyes, spoke first. "Your Majesty, this human's presence endangers our empire. Already his actions attract hostility. The attack last night was proof of that." The Queen's voice was calm. "The attack was an act of cowardice, not proof. Captain Trent risked his life to save mine again. Would you have preferred he did nothing?" The noble stiffened. "With respect, Majesty, he is not one of us." "No," she said, her tone sharpening. "He is not, and that is precisely why we must listen to him. The humans think differently. They act differently. Perhaps that is what we need." The hall went silent. Elias stood quietly beside her, unsure what to say. He wasn't used to being defended by royalty. After the meeting, as they walked through the quiet halls, Elias said softly, "You didn't have to do that." She smiled faintly. "Yes, I did. You saved me twice. I think that earns you the right to be heard." They walked in silence for a while, their footsteps echoing against the smooth floor. Then the Queen spoke again, her tone thoughtful. "You've changed the way I see the galaxy, Captain. Before you, I saw humanity as wild and dangerous. Now I see that it is alive in a way we have forgotten." Elias looked at her, unsure how to respond. "I'm not sure humanity's that special, Majesty. We make mistakes. A lot of them." She met his gaze. "And yet you learn from them. That too is rare." That night, the Queen gave him access to the royal archives, a place no outsider had ever entered. Inside were holograms of Zerathi history, stories stretching back thousands of years. She wanted him to see how her people once were, curious, brave, and full of wonder. As he watched the glowing images, he understood something. The Zerathi had lost something humans still carried: the drive to explore, to risk, to care without reason. The Queen joined him, standing close enough that their reflections shimmered together on the glass floor. "You see now," she whispered. "We were not always cold. Once we were dreamers too." Elias nodded. "Maybe it's time you remembered that." When their eyes met, there was no barrier of species or rank, just understanding. In that quiet moment, under the light of ancient stars, the Queen of a great empire and a simple human rescuer shared a silence that meant more than words ever could. Outside, the galaxy turned slowly, unaware that something new was forming in that palace of glass and light. Something fragile, something powerful, a bond between two worlds that had never truly met, until one human decided that saving a stranger was worth everything. The days that followed were quiet, but beneath that calm, the galaxy trembled. The Zerathi sovereignty and the Human Federation stood on the edge of a cold conflict. Border patrols grew tense, ambassadors traded careful words, and every signal between the two empires carried hidden worry. In the palace of light above Zerath Prime, Queen Viritha could feel the weight of it pressing on her. Her advisors urged her to act with caution, to distance herself from the human who had changed her reputation. But she refused. Elias Trent had become more than a guest. He had become her truth, living proof that the galaxy still had goodness worth believing in. The Queen spent hours each day with him, walking through the crystal gardens, speaking of their worlds, and studying the maps of troubled borders. She had begun to trust his insight. Where her advisors saw threats, he saw misunderstandings. Where they saw weakness, he saw a chance to make peace. Still, not everyone agreed. Some nobles whispered that the Queen had lost her judgment, that she cared too much for a species too young to understand power. One night, as the twin moons shone pale over the palace, Elias stood by the great window of his chamber, watching the city lights below. The door chimed softly, and when it opened, the Queen entered, her silver cloak glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Your Majesty," Elias said, bowing slightly. "You shouldn't be here at this hour," she smiled gently. "And yet, here I am." She walked to the window beside him. For a long time, neither spoke. Then she said quietly, "Tomorrow I must meet with the High Council. They wish to dissolve the new alliance I have been building with humanity." Elias turned to her. "They want to cut ties. They believe it is too dangerous," she said. "They think the Federation only seeks advantage, not friendship." He frowned. "That's not true. Humanity wants peace as much as you do." "I know," she said softly. But belief is a fragile thing. They fear what they do not understand. He looked at her, his voice steady. Then show them. Show them what understanding looks like. The queen met his eyes, and in that moment she saw in him not just bravery, but conviction, a strength that came not from power, but from choice. The next day, the council chamber was filled with tension. Dozens of nobles stood in their shining robes, their eyes fixed on the queen as she entered. Elias stood beside her, silent but solid. The High Chancellor spoke first. Your Majesty, this human has brought trouble to our empire. His presence has sparked violence, division, and doubt. You must see that his influence weakens your rule. The queen stood tall. What weakens a ruler, Chancellor, is fear. Fear of what we do not wish to face. This man has shown courage greater than entire fleets. Twice he risked his life for mine, expecting nothing in return. Is that weakness? The chamber grew silent. Some of the nobles avoided her gaze. The Chancellor's voice trembled slightly. He is not of our kind. He cannot understand our ways. Perhaps we, said the queen, her tone firm. That is why his insight matters. Because he sees what we no longer can. The nobles murmured among themselves. The Chancellor spoke again, more sharply this time. Your Majesty, emotion clouds your reason. You speak like one enchanted. At that, Elias stepped forward. His voice was calm but strong. I didn't come here for politics. I came because I saw people who needed help. If that's something to fear, then maybe you've forgotten what leadership means. A few of the younger nobles looked startled. No one ever spoke so directly in the council chamber, but the queen only smiled faintly. You see, she said, he speaks the truth we've forgotten. Before the Chancellor could answer, an urgent alarm echoed through the chamber. The queen's guards rushed in. Majesty, hostile ships at the border. The Nerul faction has crossed into our space. The queen turned sharply. Prepare the fleet. All council sessions are suspended. The nobles scattered, their faces pale. Within minutes, the palace became a storm of activity. Ships were readied, commands shouted, and warnings sent to the Federation border. Elias followed the queen to the command room, where holograms of ships floated in the air like moving stars. The Nerul faction? He asked. I thought they were neutral. They were, she said grimly, until someone convinced them humanity was planning an attack. False information, most likely planted by those who want this alliance broken. Then we have to stop it before it turns into war, Elias said. The queen looked at him. How? Let me go, he said. I can talk to the human border commander. We'll coordinate before someone fires the first shot. She hesitated. It's too dangerous, he met her gaze. So is rescuing you. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she gave a slow nod. Very well, Captain. Take my fastest vessel. You'll have one escort, and my trust. He bowed slightly. That's enough. Within an hour, Elias was aboard a sleek royal craft, its engines glowing with soft blue fire. As it left orbit, the queen watched from the balcony, her hands clasped tightly together. She told herself she trusted him, but deep down, fear whispered that she might lose him again. The journey to the border took less than 2 hours. When the ship arrived, the sight was grim. Hundreds of vessels from both sides facing one another in the darkness, their weapons charged but not yet fired. One mistake, one nervous trigger, and the war would begin. Elias opened a channel to both fleets. This is Captain Elias Trent, acting envoy under order of Queen Verethsa. I request immediate ceasefire. The human admiral appeared on screen, surprise flickering across his face. Elias, you're alive? Alive and working, Elias said quickly. Listen, Admiral, this isn't what it looks like. Someone's trying to start a war. Stand down your guns! The Zirathi commander appeared next, his voice cold. Why should we listen to a human? Because if you don't, Elias said firmly, millions will die for a lie. For a moment, neither side spoke. The tension in the air was unbearable. Then slowly, the human admiral nodded. We'll hold fire for 5 minutes. Elias turned to the Zirathi commander. That's all I ask. Let the queen send her message. Back on Zyrath Prime, the queen's face appeared on every screen, her voice calm but powerful. People of both sides, stand down. You have been deceived. The Nerul attack was not of human design. It was an act of manipulation meant to destroy peace before it began. Let us not give our enemies what they desire. Her words spread across both fleets. The silence that followed felt endless. Then one by one, ships powered down their weapons. Engines cooled. Lights dimmed. The war that had been seconds away simply ended. When Elias returned to Zerath Prime, the Queen was waiting for him at the landing bay. As he stepped down the ramp, she met him halfway, her eyes bright with emotion she could no longer hide. "You stopped a war," she said softly. "You did what logic could not." He smiled tiredly. "Guess sometimes a little chaos helps." She laughed quietly, the sound like music. Then she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You've shown my people what courage truly means. You've reminded me of what it feels like to believe." He looked at her, the same calm strength in his eyes that had saved her once before. "You didn't need reminding, Majesty. You just needed a reason." For a moment neither spoke. Around them, the hangar lights shimmered against the silver walls. The Queen's expression softened. "Then perhaps," she said, "you will stay, as my advisor of valor, as the bridge between our worlds." Elias hesitated only a second before nodding. "If you'll have me." Her smile was quiet but full of warmth. "Always." Days later, as the stars turned gently beyond the palace windows, the Queen and the humans stood together once more on the same balcony where it had all begun. The galaxy was still vast and full of danger, but for the first time in many years, it felt hopeful. Elias looked up at the night sky and said softly, "Funny, I thought saving a stranger was just another day's work." The Queen's golden eyes shone in the starlight. "And yet that act changed the fate of 2 worlds," he smiled. "Guess we both got lucky then." They stood there in silence, side by side, 2 beings from different worlds, united not by duty, but by the courage to care. And far above them, the stars seemed to burn a little brighter, as if the universe itself was proud of the strange, reckless species called human.